to you, Dr. Christie.
Thank you, Abuna, for that lovely prayer. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for this third presentation. I'm trying to share my screen here. Hopefully all you can see that. Okay. And so we come to the end here where we're going to be talking about, so we've learned about children all the way to tweens, and we have learned about adolescence and all the way up to parenting of adults, children. And now today we're going to talk about how to parent with resilience, and that involves knowing ourselves really well and also knowing our children really well and listening to them before we're able to parent with resilience. So I start off today by talking about, again, just covering for the third talk today, we're going to be talking about how to have difficult conversations with our children, which actually could be a fourth presentation in and of itself, but we talked a little bit about SMART goals already. We're going to be talking about positive parenting this time, and how to parent through that lifespan to minimize or mitigate the effects of stress and to maximize the effects of health, and doing so by parenting with resilience. So I'll touch a little bit on the difficult conversations, but I think that could be an entire talk in and of itself. So we won't cover that one too much today, but I'll touch on it a little bit. So in general, stress is anytime there is an effect on our body or our mind by things in the environment or things that are occurring around us. It can come from pleasant experiences. Say you got a promotion, or you got elevated to something in school. You got extra responsibilities or things like that. That can create a lot of stress as well. But there can also be distress that results from negative experiences, a test coming up, or unfortunately a parent being fired or something like that. Those things can result in a lot of stress as well and create a stress on the family. If one of its members, as the Bible says, is going through difficulty, then everybody else is going through difficulty as well. And so anytime there is a body demand, there's a demand on our body from something in our environment. And we talked about with children and adolescents, there's a lot going on in their system. They're going through exams and finals and making friends. And as they approach adulthood, they're thinking about becoming individuals on their own. What that feels like to be adults and to be off on their own. So they have to either adjust to these demands appropriately, and that's called adjustment, or they don't adjust to these demands appropriately, and that results in maladjustment or stress. And I have shown this slide every single of the 3 lectures because it is so important that we don't think that all stress is negative. All stress is not bad. But if it is overwhelming and we are unable to deal with it by coping, then it gets into that red and orange zone where people break down and they burn out and they start getting overloaded and exhausted and fatigued and have anxiety and have depression. And they kind of spin out of control because they're unable to manage their stressors. We want stress to stay in the green and the yellow zone where there is a peak performance. This is where we're focused and we're motivated and we're able to manage the amount of work that we have. And we are actually very healthy at this point because we're activated and optimally coping and optimally focusing on what we need to focus on. So our stress level here is just at the right amount. And our job kind of as parents is to help kids to kind of manage it so it doesn't get into the orange or to the red zone, and to recognize if it's going in that direction to get them some help. All right, so again, we talked about this last time as well. What causes stress? It could be everything from an overambitious schedule, school, running late, finances, not enough responsibilities, not enough free time. If there's traffic or technology, or I had some computer glitches this morning and I was, kind of worried about this presentation. And fortunately and thankfully, I was able to get on, but for a little while, technology can be a stressor. If you're not spending enough alone time or time with God to help you to decipher what you need to do, if you don't have enough of a support network, or your support network is far away or unaware of what you're going through, believe it or not, vacation time is important because it helps you to move away from the everyday stressors. And so even things that will help us to take care of ourselves are not a luxury, but really a necessity to prevent us from going into that red and orange zone. If there are problems in the family or communicating with your family, that can create a lot of difficulty with kids as well. And so there's social stressors, work-related stressors, and life stressors in general. And so again, we talked about what causes pressure in kids. It's academic things. We've talked about that. We've talked about relationship with their peers or their parents, self-esteem issues, or disappointment and rejection. And all of these things can cause stressors in our kids and even young adults as they get older. So the myth is that children are too young to experience stress, or that stress only comes from bad parenting. Stress will come whether you're a good parent or a bad parent. This is why we have to learn how to manage it. Some people say that if we just forget about it and brush it under the rug, then it won't matter because they won't remember. And if we don't just talk about it, it will just go away. Or everyone experiences stress, so we shouldn't deal with kids' stress because it's not that important. Everybody experiences stress, or they're too young to experience stress, so let's just forget about it. But we know from the Bible that stress is kind of a part of life. There's some verses here that you can look up, and even Christ in Gethsemane probably experienced stress, knowing about the crucifixion the next day, and the disciples kind of had fallen asleep and things like that. So stress is an experience in life, but again, it doesn't have to consume us, and we don't have to succumb to it. And that's the point of today's lecture. Again, stress can come from our parents, from the parents in this group. As you can see from this picture, parents are juggling a million things. They're juggling work, maybe sometimes more than one job. Maybe they're not understanding their kids or communicating with them well. Maybe they're demanding perfection. Maybe the parents are having financial or marital issues. Maybe the parents themselves are overloaded and kind of putting the kids' problems to the side. And this happens very often because parents are dealing with their own stressors. So maybe sometimes the stress in the parents' life is also being displaced onto the children, and that causes some issues as well. And also there could be acculturation differences if you have more than one generation or age group living in the same home. Some may have come from overseas. Some may be, raised in the West. They have different understanding of things. They've been raised a little bit differently. And so there may be some clashes in that regard that causes stress as well. Again, we talked about this before, identifying things physically through feeling, through behavior, or through thinking. Again, you can find all kinds of symptoms to tell you if somebody's stressed, from unfortunately substance use as they get older, to a lack of confidence, or being more irritable, or just apprehensive about everything, or being more fussy. In their mind, they could be worrying all the time, or just making improper decisions or quick decisions. And their body can be affected too. Lots of headaches, such as GI symptoms, lots of physical symptoms. You can kind of see all of these things in people that are experiencing a lot of stress and a lot of difficulty. So what can parents and servants do? If you're a parent or a servant, believe it or not, you have an important role. Even as servants, obviously the parents are the ones that are mostly raising their kids, but our job in general is to balance out the stress and the coping skills. And the coping skills sometimes are a little bit lower than the stressors, and so the stress gets so heavy, and the scale becomes imbalanced a little bit. And so we want to increase their ability to realize that they have strengths, and we'll talk about that today, and that they have coping skills that can help them to manage and overcome as well. So we can help our kids by first acknowledging and validating that they have a problem. They want to be heard and understood. And if you're just sweeping things under the rug or telling them, just go and pray harder, everything will be fine. Of course, prayer is important, but we have to act as well. You wouldn't tell a person with diabetes or heart disease, for example, just go pray and everything will be well. You would tell them to go to the doctor, follow the regimen that the doctor gives them, whether it be diet or exercise or food or whatever it is. And you have to do the same for our kids. Again, this is not meant to if they're stressed that it's a weakness or that they're not praying hard enough. Life can be stressful. So we want to engage with them and communicate with them and find their positivities and gifts in each child and help them to celebrate who their best self is, help them to problem solve, help them to promote resilience. And then after you've done all that, don't just say, okay, now they're perfect, everything is fine, I can walk away and everything will be okay. You have to go back and reevaluate. Did this work? Did it not work? What can I do to help my child achieve what they need to achieve so that they can become stronger and better as they grow? So the first thing that you have to do as parents is you have to know yourself. Sometimes we're trying to parent from a place and we don't even know who we are in order to be able to acknowledge their experiences or validate their experiences. We have to greet them with warmth and genuineness and empathy and consistency and patience. And we also have to help our children to understand that despite their difficulties, they also have strengths. We have to accept that challenge is a part of life, but again, we don't have to succumb or give in to those challenges. And we have to remember that we are remarkably, remarkably, remarkably resilient. And this is why this is the field that I choose to study and work in, because truly people can turn their lives around, even from the darkest place. And Christianity is a very resilient, second chance, hopeful faith to be in as well. So, as a parent, you have to understand that parenting is a privilege and a responsibility. Sometimes people want to run away from the responsibility, or they don't, or they are overwhelmed, so they don't see it as a privilege. But it truly is a privilege and a responsibility. And no matter who you are, whether you're a servant or a parent, once you are put into the life of a child, you have a purpose, you have a divine purpose to kind of guide and help that child to grow. Again, whether you're a parent or a grandparent, or whoever you are. And so it's important to know ourselves because it's truly the beginning of all wisdom. We have to know ourselves well. We have to be clear about what we want in our lives and the lives of our children. We have to know that we have a sense of purpose, and we have to know that we have to achieve our goals and what defines us and what makes us happy. The purpose of our life is to have a life of purpose. And sometimes there's a barrier in our lives to prevent us from figuring out who we are and what we are looking for in our lives and our children's lives. So sometimes we may be afraid of what we will find if we are looking deeply in ourselves and trying to understand ourselves and where our patterns, our parenting patterns are coming from. Maybe they're coming from our own childhood and how we were parented. But sometimes we're afraid of what we're going to find out, so we don't dig deeper. Sometimes we're afraid to appear weak or vulnerable. Sometimes it's an issue of self-esteem or a lack of self-love. Maybe it's we're facing obstacles ourselves and we don't want to bring that into the parenting relationship. So we just say it is better to stifle ourselves and just parent the best that we know how. And sometimes we don't know how to do that or who that is. So you first have to face yourself and not feel a sense of guilt and shame, but to understand maybe where things are coming from and how to make improvements. We have to forgive others that have maybe hurt us, and this may be contributing to our poor parenting at times. But we know that, again, we are doing this in a village, like we've been talking about before. And so we have to uncover some of those things that are negative patterns, but also figure out how to help ourselves to parent better, whether it's by reaching out to other people or by being guided by others. Maybe our father of confession can help us as well. We also have to recognize our strengths. Not everything that you uncover will be negative. Sometimes you will recognize that you yourself are a survivor in many areas and that you yourself are resilient and that you yourself have strengths. So what is your life purpose? And do you have long-term and short-term goals for yourself and for your family? Can you create bigger goals? And are you considering, again, your holistic self, your mind, your body, and your spirit? Think about what are your core values. What do you see as your core values? Because again, you want to bring those to your children. Are they things like honesty and love and kindness and loyalty? Do you have other core values that you appreciate? Where did they come from? And then apply those again to your children. You also want to find inspiration from things that are around you. For example, you want to savor things that are around you that you enjoy. And I'll talk about this more towards the end of the presentation. But basically, as parents, like I said, we're juggling a million things like that picture a few moments ago. And we don't take time to slow down and spend time with our kids. We don't take time to watch a show with them and discuss it or read a book and discuss it. And Lent is the perfect time, now that we're in Lent, to slow down and to savor things around us and to meditate on God, and to meditate on the values that we have and how we want to implement those in our kids. When we're going through that rush of life, we're not going to be able to have time to do those things. We also need to spend time alone ourselves to gather our thoughts, to learn about our dreams and our values, and to come up with a plan and to hear the voice of God. We want to journal. We want to do those things that I just said a minute ago, and journal about them so we can keep a log of everything that we're learning, and kind of refer back to it and see where there were times of struggle and times of success. And it helps you to know your emotions and your strengths and your weaknesses. And so there is an opportunity to grow, of course, in every single step. We need to see ourselves and make sense of things. That's why we have to self-reflect. We have to uncover where there have been breakthroughs. We have to challenge ourselves by thinking in a different way and increase self-awareness, and live with more intention in our life. And again, not just rushing through everything. We need to see ourselves with strengths and how God intended us to be, because again, the healthier that we are, the more we're going to be able to embark those kinds of things on our children as well. So questions that you can ask yourself: what do I project about myself onto others? Do I repress anything or push anything down? Do I run away from anything? Who do I see as a role model, and am I a role model to my children? Do I idolize anything? Is there something that is taking my time away from my children, whether it's a habit or whether it is something that just takes me away from my family and takes me away from God? Obviously, those are things that we should try to get rid of. Are there healthy and unhealthy attachments in my life? Similar to that, what do I idolize? Am I carrying a grudge against myself for something that I've done or against somebody else? What areas do I need to assert myself? And if I'm being weak in some areas, is my child picking up on those tendencies and they're not standing up to themselves or reaping all of the benefits of the strengths that God gave us? So again, what are the areas of strength and what areas do I need to work on? And when I do the self-discovery, I may find things that are not pleasant or things that I'm resistant against, or find things that are an obstacle, or I might find some criticism or some sadness or anxiety. But ask yourself, is this God's will for my life? And how can I again apply the best part of myself in order to raise my kids the right way? So the first thing that you have to do once you've had this journey of self-discovery and you've learned more about yourself and your good points and your bad points, because again, you're going to knowingly or unknowingly put those on your kids. Whatever good habits or poor habits that you have, you're going to place those on your children. And so it's really good to know yourself so that you can help your children to be the best that they can be. And so the first step of this is that they're going to reveal something and you have to listen. If you don't listen, if you don't validate, if you don't understand, if you don't pay attention to what they're saying, if you judge them harshly, they're going to run. I'm not saying that there's no consequences. I'm not saying that you can't guide them in the right direction. But especially adolescents and middle schoolers, if they find judgment or harshness, they're going to run or shut down. And we don't want that. We want there to be a level of understanding. They're going to reveal something. You're going to want to listen. And then somewhere in the middle is some understanding. So before you respond, which is at the top of the pyramid there, you have to sense how they're feeling. You have to interpret what they're saying. You have to evaluate it carefully, and then you can respond. Listen, listen, listen. Acknowledge their emotions. Ask open-ended questions. Identify more emotions at this point, and ask your child what they think is happening in this situation and their understanding of it. If you try to give advice without first understanding where they're coming from, again, they're going to shut down. So try to work it out together as a partnership. This is my problem as much as it is your problem, and we are partners together, and I'm going to help you to figure it out. There are different styles of parenting. Again, I know I'm focusing on the parents a lot in this case, but just try to understand first that you have to know yourself and your style of parenting before you start. So as a parent, you are supposed to be nurturing your child so that they increase in their ideas and grow and develop into their own leaders and be able, again, like we talked about in the beginning, is to have the proper roots and then the proper wings to do it on their own. You have to be present in your life. You have to empathize with them and understand their feelings. You have to give of yourself, spark new ideas and creativity in them, and then help them, like I said, to grow into their own leadership and their own understanding of things. So as a parent, Do you rescue them as soon as they're a problem? Do you just jump in there and take away that problem and, um, uh, prevent them from experiencing all of the potential consequences or experiences that are part of that situation? If you are doing that, that becomes a problem because it doesn't teach them any problem solving skills. And all it teaches them is somebody's going to come in and rescue me, and then it's over. You have to learn how to kind of problem solve your way through a problem and not just to be immediately rescued. Obviously, if they're in danger, if they're out somewhere or they're about to be harmed or something like that, then rescuing is important. But if it is a situation that they got themselves into and they can problem solve their way out, then guide them, but don't automatically rescue them. Some other parents will lecture their kids nonstop. They will nitpick on everything that they do. They will pick on them, pick on them, pick on them. And again, it doesn't teach them that they can problem solve on their own. It doesn't teach them anything about self-confidence. They feel that they are spoken to instead of spoken with. And they're basically getting the message that I'm not smart enough to figure this out on my own. And I have to rely on my lecturing parent to teach me what to do. Some parents see that this is a problem and they try to distract their kids. So they just brush it under the rug. They talk about something else. And any problem that is not addressed is just going to fester and grow. It's going to grow bigger and bigger and bigger until it gets too big to solve or get it even harder to solve. So this again tells them that my problem is not worthy to be solved. I'm not worthy to be paid attention to, even though I feel like this is a problem. You're not paying attention to me. So don't distract them, help them to solve by guiding and leading them through. Some parents are very aggressive. They will be angry at their children all the time. They will put them down. They will shout at them regularly. And this is usually triggered by something going on with the parent. All right. If the child has behavioral problems, then we can figure that out. We can get them some help for that. But usually a parent who is aggressive is overwhelmed and dealing with their own issues. Other parents are very passive. That is the other extreme. They just sit down and take it. They complain a lot about their kids, but don't do anything about it. They completely withdraw and they give in to all of their children's demands. They're afraid if they discipline their child, they will lose them, or that will lead to scars, or it will lead to a blow up. And so they don't do anything. Or these parents are inexperienced and not leaning on their village for help. You have to be assertive. There has to be clear and firm requests. You have to be not threatened by that sometimes there's going to be a conflict or a confrontation. You are determined to get through this issue, but you are still fair and confident and relaxed, and you follow through with the consequences, and you retrain the child to correct behavior, and you negotiate with this child as they get older, and you evolve your parenting as they get older, and you are always expressing love. All right. There are parents that do silent treatments for like a week or two at a time. That's not appropriate. They completely withdraw love and affection. All that teaches them is that when I have a difficulty or I'm not being on my best behavior, that you're going to run in the opposite direction. And I don't feel safe in that regard. So express love always, even if you are disappointed. Okay. An aggressive person is only focused on their needs, and a passive person is only focused on the other person's needs, but eventually it leads to resentment. And you want to be assertive, which is firm, respectful, but also firm and loving at the same time. So here is how you should parent. Okay. We're going to talk about the yellow one last because that's the most important one to follow. The other three are not very good. The yellow one is the good one. So in general, there are 4 parenting styles. There are parents across the top there that are either high or low in rules, and across the left from top to bottom, they're either low or high in love and respect. So there are some parents that love and respect their children tremendously, but they don't have any rules. And those parents are called permissive parents because they let their kids do whatever they want. They let them get away with everything. There are no rules. There are no consequences. I love you so much that you can run around and do whatever you want. Again, that's not acceptable. There are other parents that are very low in the amount of rules and very low in the amount of love. These parents completely neglect their children. They have no love and no rules. And again, they're not bothered by the good or the bad that these kids are doing, and they just let them be, and the kids are raising themselves without any parameters. Also not good. On the bottom left quadrant there, you have parents that don't love their kids at all. or very little, and they are very high in the amount of rules. These are like the dictator parents, always shouting rules at their kids and demanding that they do things, but there is no love, there is no respect, there is no genuineness between these parents and these kids. These kids are going to be rough and deal with everything in life in that same rough way because the parents have dealt with them in a rough way. Instead, we need to deal with our kids with this yellow one, which is lots of rules and lots of love. These are called authoritative parents. And research after research after research tells us that this is the best way to parent your kids. Life is full of parameters, whether it's put on your seatbelt in the car or go the speed limit or follow instructions to get to a certain thing in your job or whatever it is, there's rules everywhere we go. So we have to learn that there are parameters, but we also have to learn that we're going to be loved through the process of parenting, through its ups and downs, through its good moments and bad. And research after research again tells us that this fosters good dialogue and communication with these kids. These kids are, along with warm, responsive, and attentive parents, they allow their children to explore, and they are consistent in their discipline. They are unconditional in their love, and yet they are firm and supportive. They are mutual in their respect, and these children become successful and happy and generous and respectful to adults and to rules. And so these kids grow up to be the most mentally well and healthy and adjusted kids in comparison to the others that have an imbalance between rules and love. Parents need to be warm and genuine, empathic, consistent, and patient. These are really, really important, but they're not enough. You can't just have these and not parent your kids. But these are important kind of service type behaviors that validate your child's experience and are the foundation of your parenting skills. So again, they're going to reveal, you're going to listen, and somewhere in the middle there is understanding. You also have to understand their hierarchy, where they are in terms of their needs hierarchy. So this is a psychologist named Maslow who studied human qualities and said that in order, we generally as humans want to reach the top of that pyramid, the blue part of that pyramid. This is where we're most moral, spontaneous, creative, able to problem solve, the best that we can be. However, we can't reach that top unless we have all of the other four that are underneath it. We need to have safety and our physiological needs met. We need to have good food and water and sleep and all of those things. We need to have a sense of safety, that we are in a safe area, and that we have these resources and that everybody around us is protecting us. Then we have to have a sense of love and belonging, that people love us, our family loves us, there are people that are going to protect us and take care of us. And then that builds a sense of level of self-esteem and confidence. And that eventually leads us to being the best that we can be, which is an aspirational goal that we all hope to reach. However, if we don't have any of the rungs of that pyramid underneath it, we're not going to reach the top of that pyramid. So where are your kids most lacking? Are they lacking self-esteem? Are they lacking love from family and friends? Are they lacking a sense of safety and security? Are they lacking basic needs even sometimes, like food and water? And wherever that need is needed, that's where we need to start and build up from there and build their self-esteem as we go. We also want to help our kids name their emotions and name their feelings, and understand that feelings are very important and essential to understanding how to manage those emotions. And so if they cannot name their emotions at all, their emotions are complex, and that can happen. At least start with these four basic emotions. And every emotion has a purpose. And so if we are feeling fearful, that means we should take a pause, put on the brakes, and figure out why this is making us pause. If anxiety is too much, then maybe there's an issue there as well, and we need to kind of focus on why we're fearful all the time. We also want to focus on if they're sad or depressed. Everybody gets sad and depressed, but if they don't want to go to school because they're sad and depressed, and this happens for more than 1 or 2 weeks at a time, then it's time to get some help to help them to understand why they're sad all the time. If they are angry usually is telling us that there's something that is unfair, but sometimes there's a lot of emotions under our anger. Things like I'm not being understood, or I'm not being heard, or I feel frustrated because nobody's paying attention to me. And obviously the best emotion here is happiness, and what are some of the things and what are the strengths that contribute to their happiness, I should say, and help them to grow in a happier, more joyful sense. Once you've had those basic emotions figured out, that's the center of the circle, you can branch out to much more complex emotions, and you can help them to figure and problem solve around those complex emotions. So you start in the middle and you branch out to the similar color as well until you get to the outside of the circle. But as you can see, emotions can be really, really complex. And there's even spaces here where you can write your own emotion. So even in any one of the colors, let's say pink there for sad, they've listed some emotions all the way out to the outside, but you can list your own emotions if they have not been listed here for you. And then you can describe emotions and use this as a regular tool. For very, very young kids, they may not be able to even verbalize what they are feeling. And again, it's important to be able to verbalize what you're feeling in order to be able to control that emotion. And so the emotions from this vocabulary chart can also be used with really young kids. They can point to one, and even nonverbal kids, like kids that have some special needs where they're not verbal, you can use the faces. And I've actually used cards with clients that have faces or scenarios or pictures on them, and then they can use that to tell a story and tell you a little bit more about what they're feeling. But there's all kinds of tools that can be used to help you to kind of figure out how you're feeling, because that's the most important emotion as well. So you got to know your strengths and develop them. Strengths are things that you are good at and things that you enjoy. But again, it's not just what you're learning in school. It could be something related to movement or self-reflection or interpersonal skills. There is more than one way to be intelligent. Obviously, school is important, and that needs to be addressed if we're not doing well. But it's not just math and science, it's other things that make you intelligent as well, even music and interpersonal connections. And emotional intelligence is considered an intelligence now as well, because it not only helps us to stay motivated and self-regulated and self-aware, but it helps us to know emotions in ourselves and in others. And that helps us to connect to other people and be social. And we are generally social beings. And so it's really important that we foster these other skills in our kids as well. One of my most favorite and most important slides that I always give in all of my presentations, and this is the area where I've concentrated most of my work over the last 20 years, is the area of character strengths. Character strengths are things that have been found in people all around the world, regardless of who they are, what country they're in, what race they are, socioeconomic status. We all have these 24 character strengths inside of us, and everybody has their own constellation or makeup. So your number one may not be your spouse's number one or your child's number one, but it's still your number one. And you could take a quiz. I have no affiliation with the people that make this quiz, but I often refer it to my clients because it helps them to identify their character strengths. And this is research that tells us this is how these are skills and things that are in all of us and that we find morally important around the world. Again, regardless of culture, regardless of race, regardless of country, doesn't matter, age, doesn't matter. And you could take this quiz and figure out what your top strengths are. And the more that we lean on, say, our top 3 or our top 5 strengths, then we are bringing more resilience to ourselves and to the people that we interact with, because again, we're bringing our best foot forward and highlighting these important moral characteristics that are in each of us. And so again, there's 24 of these, and they're really important to help us to grow and to develop into the best people that we can be and reach the top of that Maslow hierarchy of needs. So how do we problem solve and help our resilient children to become more resilient? Imagine there's a tug of war or an arm wrestling match here between our strengths and our weaknesses. And by the way, let me go back here for 1 second. Even when you get to number 24 on your list of strengths, that is not a weakness. That is just a lower strength. So the higher the number, the more you lean on that strength, and that's the more the way that you show up in the world. But even number 24 is still considered a strength in your list of highest to lowest. So we call them lower strengths, but we do not call them weaknesses. In general in life, we want to, again, it's like a tug of war. or an arm wrestling match between our strengths and our weaknesses. But our job as parents is to take their questions and turn them into ideas and creativity and a greater understanding of the world around them. We want to help them to cultivate resilience. Resilience is a muscle. It is not something that we are, born with, or it comes innately necessarily. Sometimes it can come innately, but it is a way to grow and maneuver around struggles and challenges, and to grow even in the non-nutrient environments. Even if you're going through a struggle like this flower, you can still thrive and develop and grow, and we can still cultivate resilience. In children, if they have a strong connection to you, they will be more resilient. If you help them to promote creative problem solving, and don't rush into fix. Again, don't rescue immediately unless they're in imminent harm and they're going to be in danger if you don't rescue. Otherwise, don't rush to fix. Let them think it through. Let them fix it. Let them figure it out. Even if they're making a mess, if they're pouring a jug of milk and they make a spill, it's okay. We'll clean up the spill together. But you're learning the correct way to pour out of the jug of milk or out of the jug of water. And that goes the case for larger problems as well. Ask questions and help them to problem solve, help them to label their emotions, demonstrate good coping skills and a way to embrace the mistakes and grow from them. Have you learned something? How have you grown? What are your strengths and how do you establish meaning? From the American Psychological Association, they talked a lot about making connections, avoid seeing the problem as insurmountable, accept that change is a part of life. You have to move towards your goals. You have to take decisive action, keep things in perspective, keep things hopeful, take care of yourself, and nurture a positive self-view and look for opportunities of self-discovery as you go through this situation so that you can figure out how to cope with it. Research also tells us that every person, if they're alive right now, has been through some sort of struggle or some sort of challenge, whether it was chronic and long-term or transient and short-term. Therefore, you already have some resilience skills in you because you have reached this point, whether you're 5, 55, or 105. You have reached that point because you've been resilient, because you've worked through something. So sit and reflect on that. Figure out how you escaped from any vulnerable situation. Figure out if there's been a pattern and use that pattern to help you to fix that situation that you're in right now. Challenge yourself to embrace your own story of resilience and your past. Get corroborating evidence from family, friends, spouses, neighbors, whoever it is that's going to, father of confession, who's going to help you remember how you overcame the last hurdle. And then you can tailor make and brainstorm a way to work yourself through your resilience and apply that resilience to your current situation. You're going to think about the problem that you're in now, but not overwhelm yourself with troubles. And you're going to use your past, your present, and your future to help you to overcome your vulnerabilities. You want to enhance things like self-esteem. You don't want to put your head in the sand, like I said, and brush things under the rug and pretend they're not happening. Research tells us this guy down here that is putting his head in the sand is actually going to struggle more in the long term because he hasn't faced the problem head on, problem solved, and figured out a way to deal with it. You also want to secure good attachments, like I said, that helps you to master the situation that you're in, and it helps you to become more resilient in the long term. You want to encourage your kids to reframe what the situation is and not just look at it negatively, but to find meaning out of that situation, to focus on their strengths, and again, to accept that adversity is part of life. The more that you try to run away from it, the more it's going to kind of catch up to you and grow and fester. Deal with it head on, learn to problem solve, and move forward. With children, again, we want to focus on their strength, focus on their resilient history, focus on health, not just pathology. We want to teach and model good behaviors and solutions, allow them to express themselves in certain situations and explain what is happening from their perspective. In all of this, we want to give them love. That doesn't mean that you're not disappointed, but it means you're going to give them love, and that's going to help them to recover from these difficult situations. This is more of the same of what I just said, but creating a good relationship within the family, and to set realistic goals for them to accomplish so that they can return to normal activities. In terms of spiritual resilience, because again, we are holistic creatures. We are biological, psychological, social, and spiritual. So we want to create a goal for them. Again, Lent is the perfect time to do that. Now that we have started Lent, determine a goal, figure out what's not working and remove it. Don't be complacent. be action oriented, be balanced, accept that challenges occur, but that they're all temporary. Pope Shenouda used to tell us that, the problem is temporary, God is present, and it will end for good. So sometimes we have to let go and let God, but other times we have to problem solve and work to achieve this problem, an answer to this problem. We want to practice gratitude, improve on yesterday with small leaps, obviously pray and don't give up. We talked about SMART goals last week, that we have to be specific and measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. We also want to practice gratitude because research, and again, the church in its wisdom has the Thanksgiving prayer that is read throughout the year in all kinds of situations, from funerals to baptisms, to the happiest to the saddest occasions. Research is catching up to what our early founding fathers of our church have said. The fathers of the church have talked about the importance of gratitude enough to make this prayer, but research is catching up to that and saying that people with gratitude are less anxious, less depressed, less lonely, less envious of others. They are able to mindfully see the good. So think about 2 or 3 things that have gone well. And no matter how dire or desperately bad you think the situation is, a gratitude journal or writing letters to people and what they have done for you, showing you these gratitudes shifts your perspective to focus on those things and away from the negativity and the problem. We also want to practice altruism. Research tells us that when we help others, that helps us to grow and become more resilient. Again, apply your own story of resilience. Research tells us when we increase positive emotions, this helps us to broaden our perspective and problem solve better, helps us to zoom out and see the problem and see the entire situation for what it is, not just focusing in on the problem, which tends to happen. So we're able to broaden and build from that perspective. And a lot of these, as you can see, overlap with the fruits of the Spirit. So again, the Bible knew this more than 2,000 years ago, before the science has caught up and said the same thing. When we're problem solving, we want to analyze what has caused this unwanted situation. Was it my own choices? Did I do something to bring me to this point? If so, let's figure out how to fix it in the future. We want to generate a set of alternative interventions to help us to achieve our goal. And then we want to evaluate which solutions are best, come up with a plan together. And then after you've implemented that plan, come back around and see if this has been effective or not. If not, pick something else from your list, try that out, and on goes this cycle. Again, we want to savor. Every one of us, probably especially in the West, is rushing through life more than ever before. But the more that we slow down and stop to smell the roses, as they say, and savor that cup of coffee or tea that you're drinking, and have a good conversation with a friend, and not rush through everything. Research tells us that we bank these positive experiences in a mental bank, and we can withdraw from those mental experiences when we're having a difficult time. So it helps us to be present in the moment, to appreciate the things that are in our life that are good, and then to come back and say, let me think about these things, even when things are not going so well, to remember those positive experiences. So in summary of everything I've said today, let's express gratitude. Let's think of our strengths and use them. Let's savor our good experiences and use positive emotions to broaden and build our perspective and not be so narrowly focused just on the problem, to examine our own story of resilience, and to be altruistic and supportive and helpful of others. This is a lovely website. The last time I checked, it was about 225 conversation starters. But when I first started using this website, it was like 175. So this number is constantly increasing, but it's a good way if you are not able to figure out a way to communicate correctly with your children, specifically those preteens and teens that are kind of in their own mind and their own world. These are great conversation starters. Not every one of the 225 is going to fit with your family or your values, but it's a great way to at least start communicating with your children and to find a way to communicate effectively and in a good, healthy way. As parents, we should not yell. They're only going to hear the volume at that point. They're not going to hear your words. Yelling can be kind of scarring. So these are non-effective strategies. Instead, take the opposite tone. Don't be a broken record and just repeat yourself over and over. Again, get advice from other people. Use it as a kind of a community building activity as well. take a break from it and come back to it. Maybe you'll both have a different perspective. Make it fun and control the conversation, but don't create a power struggle. These again are questions for kids to know themselves. If you want to screenshot this screen, you can do that. Parents are often picking on the negative things, but they're not picking on the positive things. So here's 101 words of affirmation that kids want to hear. And there's different ways that you can help your child to calm down. Everybody gets agitated and upset. If they're just having an emotion, tell them to calm down, and then you will speak to them and then talk to them about what they were experiencing. That is often effective. Sometimes they just want to blow off steam. Again, there are better ways to handle that than to get into a screaming match or a negative situation. But there are ways that they can kind of calm themselves down with deep breaths or to repeat an arrow prayer over and over again. But that's really important as well, and see where the stress is coming from. This is a really important slide too. A parent who listens creates a child who believes that their voice matters in this world where their voice is often drowned out. So their voice matters. Just because they're small does not mean that they don't have feelings or bad days or difficult experiences. They do. So pay attention to them, and pay attention to how you speak to your children, because that becomes their inner voice. If you are overly critical all the time, they're going to be overly critical of themselves as they grow up. Their self-esteem is going to suffer, and that's going to cause a lot of psychological and even spiritual problems, believe it or not. So give your children a voice. It has to come from a place of respect and love, but pay attention to how you're speaking to them. They are beautiful creatures that God created, and so we should take that with, again, an honor and a privilege as well as a responsibility. We talked about this briefly before, but we want to train them by example before a problem happens, be good mentors, by love during the problem, and with hope after a problem has occurred. We are not hopeless. We again have second chances. Christianity is all about that. And these are the verses that kind of go with that. I'm just going to go through that just quickly, just in the interest of time. And know that the church is very important, but think about how many hours they are spending with you as parents versus the church versus their friends or schools or activities. The church teaches the dogma and the spiritual growth and all of those things. But parents, you have a huge role. It does not replace where I've seen some churches, the parents just go drop off the kids and leave for hours at a time. It's not just a babysitting service. You have to be invested and involved in your kids' spiritual and psychological and social upbringing. Poor parenting consists of this: not being patient, poor communication. I'm not going to read each one, but rejecting and neglecting them not being able to trust you or you're not trusting them, severe, harsh breaking of the spirit kind of parenting, inconsistent parenting, not providing comfort when they need it. All of these things create great issues, and I recommend that you look at these things more closely as well. So be interested and be involved. And again, remember that we are not broken. That Japanese art that I showed before can be repaired and become more valuable and precious and stronger than before. And so here are some more verses. It's never too late or too early to start, and God can guide us and help us to grow in our parenting as well. Here's some resources, and you'll find the same ones again on my website. Thank you. Questions?
Yes, thank you so much for that, Dr. Christine.
Sure.
You had to go at a fair pace, but I'm gonna really recommend this presentation to every parent and grandparent I'm in touch with. I've begun to learn so much. I will log on to the Via Character website and I'll do the test myself, and I'll encourage others to do that with their own children. I'm on the webpage and I see that they have a children's version as well.
Yes, 10 and above.
Yeah. Please, if you have questions, post them in the chat, but I want to ask a question first, or make a statement that perhaps you'll respond to. And it's the sense of hope that you had, that even if we have been poor parents and messed up our children, there is always hope for recovery and restoration, especially in the will of God, but also through us learning late as it might be to parent better. Is that fair? Absolutely. As a scientist and researcher and practitioner in the area of resilience,
I really believe in people's recovery and ability to come back from very difficult situations. And hope is throughout the Bible. And there are, when I've done presentations on resilience, I show all the characters in the Bible that have had struggles and difficulties and challenges and have come back from them. And so there's always hope. It's never too late. It's never too early to start, never too late to not start. You don't say my child is 40 and I'm in my 60s or 70s. I'm not going to do anything to cultivate a better relationship. We can always cultivate a better relationship, no matter what age.
Fantastic. Thank you. Does anyone have any comments? I'm very grateful for Dr. Christine spending these 3 weeks with us. And I will be asking her to support our communities again in different ways through the year. Yes, Deacon George. Can you post your message in the chat? No, anyone else going to post in the chat? At the bottom of the video, you'll see that there's a chat box, a chat option. If you click on that, you can then type in it. Okay, I will thank Dr. Christine again, and I will say that hopefully in the middle of March, we will have another speaker that I will make available to whoever wants to join us. It's Cyril Bibawi. She's another American member of our Coptic Orthodox Church, and she writes out of her own personal experience of severe mental illness in her family, growing up with a severely mentally unwell mother. And she's written a wonderful book, Loving Her Mind, which I find it hard to read books in one go. I used to when I was younger, but the internet has ruined me and I'm trying to get back to that. This was a book a couple of months ago. I read it in 5 hours non-stop. It's an amazing book and I'm going to be advertising that. It will be very interesting for us to hear her speak very boldly about her own experience. Part of what we're doing here is to bring our whole health into the forefront in our church, in our community. We want to be talking about how we become well in all of these ways that Dr. Christine has mentioned. And so we're going to have ongoing programs talking about our children, ourselves, students, our marriages throughout this year. And Dr. Christine will be a wonderful resource for us. Someone posted in the chat, a wonderful presentation. Thank you. And I echo that. It really was. And as soon as I've converted it and uploaded it to YouTube, I will start promoting it very much indeed. But let me just pray a prayer of thanksgiving and blessing before we depart. Heavenly Father, we thank you for all these things that you teach us through your servants. We thank you that it is never too late for us to improve every aspect of our life. And we pray for those of us who are older in our parenting experience, that you might continue to teach us how perhaps to redeem our weakness in the lives of our older children. But especially with those who are young, help us especially to give them a voice within themselves that echoes your own feelings towards them. Help us to develop in them a voice that will last them forever, making them feel valued and loved, worthy and valuable. Help us not to create in our children, whatever our relationship with them, a voice which is negative and critical and harmful to them. Thank you again for all of the words that Dr. Christine has spoken. I pray that you will bless her and her family and preserve her in safety and keep her in her ministry for us for many years, we pray. And now, as we come to depart, we ask that you will be present in our own families and homes and congregations, every circumstance where we are serving, especially children and youth, that you will give us insight and wisdom and understanding and remembrance of these things, so that we might put them into practice for the well-being, the health and the salvation of those in our care. Now hear us, Heavenly Father, as we lift our voices to you and pray, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one, through Jesus Christ our Lord. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.